Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It's been a busy last week. We did a podcast last Sunday, a podcast last Wednesday, and we've been starting on the A Realm Reborn Restart series that's been hitting YouTube. Reminder that as for other projects for Final Fantasy XIV, a hunt-related video as well as both of our verses are still in the process of being made. Realm Reborn Restart has been taking up a lot of time, but we are closing in on the finale of the 2.0 main scenario, probably in the next day or two, and from that point on it shouldn't take me that many more days to get through the rest of it, as I have a lot of experience, even some recent, between 2.1 and 2.55. Before we get started on the Q&A, we gotta thank our sponsors. Now, those of you who have heard me mention Steel Series, they don't specifically sponsor All the Mondays with Mr. Happy, but a reminder that my discount code was upped from 10% to 12%, and I have finally fixed that, because apparently I hadn't fixed it in all the YouTube videos up to this point. So that should now be fixed in the description of the video below, and thank you to them for sponsoring my channel as long as they have. On top of that, we have our patrons whose name we've had scrolling on the screen. We've even had more patrons pop. It doesn't make any sense to me. This is all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else, you know, but thank you, because I don't know what else to say, because it's weird to me. That's like, of all the time for there to be more sponsors popping up, I didn't expect it to be now. Let's just say I feel like that's a fair assessment of mine. Also, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who have been supporting the channel through thick and thin over the past, well, pretty much forever at this point. Thank you to them, thank you to all of our normal patrons, and of course, thank you to all of you tuning in for every episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. But we got a Q&A section. I took a quick look at some of them, because last week we had a mix of 14 spoiler questions and 7 remake spoiler questions, so I looked ahead, and I'm not sure if I'm going to take any 7 remake spoiler questions for this week, only because a lot of things were answered with some of the recent translations that came out regarding the Ultimania. So I feel like just reminding people who are watching this, if you haven't looked at my videos on those translations, head over there and look at them. There should be 2 of them on my channel. One's called Story Going Forward, and one is an interview with Tetsuya Nomura, Yoshinori Kitase, and the co-director, the lead writer, Nojima-san. So be sure to check those out, because they have a lot of information that will probably answer a lot of the more spoiler-related questions that you may have. With that, let's see what kind of questions we do have, because I didn't read all of them, so let's see some surprises. Okay, before I take this question, I'm going to scroll up to the other one. Do you think they'll ever make Australian servers? You know, they've certainly gotten the request enough at this point, but there has to be a reason why there's no Oceanic servers. Obviously, right now, don't expect them anytime soon. I think that's fair to say at the very least. But in regards to in the future, they've got to have data that supports, like, why they haven't yet. Like, I have to believe that, right? It just blows my mind that they don't exist. Sure, why not? One day, maybe. Fingers crossed. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. This was the question we actually were going to start on. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hope you're doing fine. I'm doing good as well. You're doing all right? I'm doing all right. Second time asker? Question mark. Just wondering if anyone has ever requested an in-game calendar for the free company and what you think of it. I just invited to attend a ceremony of eternal bonding and felt kind of weird not having it show in a calendar in-game. So I feel like that 100% has happened. I know with specifically fellowships you can organize events, but I don't know the efficiency of it. I'm sure it's been brought up before, and I am kind of curious as to why it doesn't exist. Now, for patch 5.3 through 5.5, and obviously they're going to continue doing it after that, they've made mention of them wanting to do more lifestyle-related adjustments to the game, and a calendar is a pretty basic lifestyle thing that you can have. It makes it easier to do exactly the things you've just suggested, or even just to lay out your week in-game so you don't have to track it outside a game. It could be just that there's so many external means of processing things like events or community or anything like that. Discord especially has just taken over so many aspects of things that, years ago we may have actually been really happy to have in game. But I feel like this is such a basic thing that I am surprised it's not there. And if nobody asks soon, maybe I'll ask it at some point, because that's a really basic question that I feel like shouldn't take that long of an answer to get. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hope you're doing well. Hello to you too, by the way. This is even a question follow-up from last week. I can see that. Thank you for answering my question last week. As you said, all my hotbars refer to my disciples of hand and lane were grayed out and new skills to choose from. So how do I transfer my stuff from my 2014 pugilist to my new pugilist? I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. There's no transferring of anything. You just fix your hotbars. That's all there is to it. And should I start with the new pugilist and all his disciples? I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. Just go to your action list and just drag stuff onto your hotbars. That's all you need to be doing right now. You're making this way more complicated than it needs to be. Also, start over with a pugilist in all those disciple of hand and land. Your pugilist isn't a disciple of hand or land. Your pugilist punches. Disciple of hand and land is crafting and gathering. So I have no idea what the question is, and hopefully my confusion will warrant an explanation. But I think my answer is just go to your skill list and put stuff on your hotbars. That's all I got to do. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hope your town is reopening soon and happy shopping. I'm not thinking about my town reopening soon. I'm thinking about people being safe and happy. I am someone who, you know, I can be inconvenienced at the very least, but I happen to be someone who's in a very fortunate circumstance in that my living sake can be done from home and is done from home. And I generally have, other than fixing whatever the hell is happening to my head and my face, it's the only service that I look at and go, yeah, you know, it'd be pretty nice to actually have that, but it's also such a minor concern for me. I just want people to be happy and safe. That's all I want. I don't care when things reopen. I care when other people care, but I don't care. It can happen whenever. So I'm not really concerned about all that right now. I just want people to be healthy and safe. I've been playing Paladin from day 1 and 2.0, and I have a question. Since when is Paladin almost automatically assigned as off-tank in Savage Raids and Extreme Trials? Remember back in Binding Coil, Second Coil, and Final Coil, Paladin was the main tank most of the time. So it's funny you mention this because there is no reason for them to be a main tank back then. The fact that we even had main tanking and off tanking back then is actually a good bit different than the way it is now. Now it's more like first tank and secondary tank. It was actually inferior to have your Paladin main tank after 2.2. In 2.0, Warrior was awful. From 2.1 onward, it was always better for overall group DPS to have your Warrior main tank and your Paladin off tank. Because your Warrior, how do I describe this properly? So, it was more overall raid DPS to have a Warrior being the main tank with the Paladin off tanking with Sword Oath than it was to have the Paladin main tanking with Shield Oath and having your Warrior just turn off Defiance and go off tank. So that was people's perception, because, and honestly, it's simply just a perception because it's the sword and board tank. It's the most quintessential fantasy cliche in regards to tanking. And I think that's really the only reason that fed into it. It really didn't help that 2.0 Warrior was, because that definitely made it come way more to fruition. But once people realized that it was suboptimal to actually be doing that, that has been shifted away from ever since Final Coil. Final Coil was really where it started to happen, and since then it's only gotten further and further and further from that being the case. It's just that in regards to raw optimization, that's how it's always worked. It's not really that important, but if you're going to be going into these harder pieces of content, and that's what's mathematically better, it's honestly probably just the better thing to go to, unless they make a change that, you know, pushes it in the other direction. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag 2 questions. Hi, how are you today? I'm doing great. It's actually been a fantastic day. Thank you for asking. I hope you're having a good one. One, in a previous Monday Q&A, you said you classified the melee jobs as fast or slow. What job would you like as another slow? I personally want a hammer-based job. I have a hard time answering any question like this. The only job I ever think of that I would like to see added to the game is Puppet Master. It's been name-dropped twice by Yoshi P. Once when he said, we've never even thought of adding it to the game. That was unfortunate. That was like back in 2014. Then in 2018 at the North American Fan Festival for Shadowbringers, where it was revealed, when they brought mention of Blue Mage and what limited jobs were, they name-dropped Beastmaster and Puppet Master as potential future limited jobs. And I personally have enjoyed Blue Mage, and a part of me would be sort of disappointed by it being a limited job, but as long as I get it, I guess I'm kind of indifferent, because I have actually enjoyed limited jobs, as clashed as their designs have been. Well, limited job. I also am not convinced they'll do another limited job. I have a feeling that the data won't support it, but we'll see. 2, what are some... Oh, and to actually answer the question, I don't really have another answer. The job either feels fun to play or it doesn't. I don't really care whether it's fast or slow or whatever. It's just, you know, personal preference. 2, what are some minor things you want in 14, both quality of life and aesthetically? I'd love to turn off auras from Warrior and Dragoon and hear bard songs. I do not want to hear bard songs. Holy shit. No. There's so many... When I raid, I play the game entirely without sound effects. I hate sound effects in MMOs. Not that they're poorly designed, but when I am trying to do high-end content, the last thing I'm trying to hear is things like people's voices, yeah, yeah, or hear every knock of the bow, or every time somebody uses a fell clip. Like, I don't want to hear it. It's so distracting, and it's not anything I'm remotely interested in. I want one thing, and I have an answer for this one. I want to be able to use Alliance-style raid frames in 8-man parties. I want to take that little grid that they have, and I want to use it for 8-man content. Have debuffs pop up in a little square. Anyone who played World of Warcraft knows raid frames is a popular add-on. It may even be part of the game now. It's been so long since I've played. That was my jam. I want that for Final Fantasy XIV. That is quality of life and aesthetics for me personally. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, how's it going? Smiley face. It's going good. Thanks for asking. Hope you're having a good one as well. 2 questions specific for Black Mage. I may not be the best authority on this, but I'll do my best. I'm a main Black Mage, and I'm wondering what they could do in the following expansions to expand on our toolkit, as right now it feels pretty good to play. Unless they add more quality of life or off GCDs to smooth out even more of our rotation, they might have to break open the whole thing and change or add a whole new part. So that you've essentially, Black Mage has hit what we call the point of Monk. Monk was at pretty much a perfect point at level 50. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was so rounded and identifiable, and the type of player it appealed to was so set in stone. Every expansion, they've struggled to add new things. There were some really, really simple things that, of course, made sense. You know, Form Shift, or Riddle of Earth, or True North, which is not specific to them, but has become something, you know, that's even been baked into Riddle of Earth. They've gotten so many skills, they've taken away old ones, and most of the pieces fall so well into place that it flows. It works so well. But the few pieces that they've added that feel like they just wanted like some epic finale ability, Tornado Kick, Six-Sided Star, I can't even remember. I've committed so much just to try to forget Monk for Shadowbringers. What the heck is it called? The thing that lets you charge. A Notman. That's what it's called. They've tried so hard to like create these things that seem like this like uber ability for the job, and it's just not working because they already had such a well-oiled machine that adding things on top of it need to be hyper situational, or they need to, as you projected, completely uproot everything in order to really make the job feel like something new. They threw something really good away when they changed Stormblood Monk so much going into Shadowbringers, away from the Tornado Kick rotations as a possibility. There were so many different skill levels of rotations you could do and clear all content with them. And it was great. It was great. And they've thrown that away. And I think Black Mage is hitting that point. What are they going to do? Add another tier of Thunderspell? Fire 5? I don't know. Ultima? Like what are they going to add? Like, it's either going to be like Red Mage, where it just sits at the end of like a timer rotation like Scorch did, or it's literally got to uproot everything. Maybe they give them Umbral Ice, Astral Fire, and finally give them like a Thunder phase or something. That might be the only other thing, man. They might have to have like an MP neutral phase that is completely separate from the other two. I don't know. It's gonna feel. I'm very worried for Black Mage next expansion. I loved leveling Black Mage. I'm doing it right now for a Realm Reborn restart, and even at the lower levels, it comes together as you level so well, and it only gets better. And I'm really concerned over what's going to happen to Black Mage going from level 80 to 90. I do think Black Mage will get Ultima. Even if they do, it's going to be like Demi Ultima or something. Like something that's not the same power. We've seen what a full-powered Ultima can do, and they are not going to let us have that. Summoner's got a Demi Bahamut. They've got the Demi Phoenix in a way. Fuck it. Let's get Demi Ultima. There you go. You got it. It's a possibility, but it's not anything specifically tied to black magic in the lore, so there's nothing to indicate that it will. Maybe just more stuff that's like Xenoglossy or Foul, and something that is like emulates Ultima without producing the same destructive force, but just enough like destructive force to control. Who knows, maybe even Xenoglossy is starting to fall into that category. 3 synced content right now can be a pain because a couple jobs when you ever get low levels, like Dark Knight, since I don't have Blackest Night. Dark Knight was not the best example of a job to complain about syncing down. Black Mage would have been a better example considering your first 2 questions. Let's see. Prune skills, make some adjustments to certain jobs to make them less clunky. I mean, they can, but no matter what, you're going to have less skills at the lower level. I don't think we hit a point. It's always possible every expansion that they finally decide, okay, we're going to let you have all your skills and we'll just scale them down. Now that tanks have really good enmity tools at the low levels and they've buffed enmity generation so much, it's now more feasible for a high level player with all their skills and synced down to damage to potentially be able to do that and have that without the tank losing aggro. I have concerns, obviously. still that low-level players won't be able to deal with the sheer amount of tools available to a high-level player. It also means that a high-level player who queues in with a low-level player might just bitch and moan even more, but, you know, honestly, that comes with the territory, even if the skills are capped. I think there are some things that you mentioned here, like AoE attacks. Some get it really early, some of them have to wait really long. The Mithril Tempest trait for Warrior is so weird that it's at such a high level, and there's other things like Dark Knight's AoE that I'm pretty sure don't come into way later. There's some things they could still definitely adjust, and I suspect they will. But as for having every skill available, which wasn't the question here, I'm still not confident that's going to happen anytime soon. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Hap, first time asker, long time subscriber. How you doing? I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing good as well. My question is, what do you think of them adding more jobs in respective to the original class? For example, like we have Summoner's Call. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. They've already said they regret doing that. They've actually largely managed to make Scholar and Summoner skills function entirely different. We see it with pretty much everything. I think there's like one skill that carries over now to Summoner, and even the Scholar ones and the Summoner ones that overlap have completely different functionality in the way they're programmed now. But they've said since the early days it was a huge mistake to do that, and they will almost definitely never do it again. I love saying never. I love speaking in absolutes. It's the hyperbolic nature of my upbringing. You know, in New Jersey, almost everyone I knew spoke in absolutes when they had a strong opinion about something. So, my absolutes get taken as like overconfidence. I'm largely confident they'll never do this based on their previous comments. Not to mention, I don't think it really saves them as many resources as people might think. They're like, oh yeah, well, if they have another job branch off a class, then it doesn't take as much, it doesn't require as much balancing because you have like the base class abilities there. Scholar Summoner are proof that that's not ever going to be the case. They had to completely rework both of them away from each other, expansion by expansion, by patch, and I think this is just, I think sooner people would rather have like an all-new job, an all-new experience than leech off of an existing one and just have an instant level 60 or an instant level 70, which I almost feel like was another reason they've said Scholar Summoner was a mistake. They'd have like a summoner who's max level and they have Scholar that's max level, but they literally know nothing about it. Okay, to be fair, almost every player who levels things don't really know anything about it. You know what? Yeah, but still, besides the point, there's so many design flaws that they've brought up in the past that I don't see them ever doing this. Alright, I read this question beforehand. It's not spoilery enough for me to put it in its own spoiler section. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. It's a 14 spoiler. Hey there, Mr. Happy. I have a somewhat spoilerish question. If Grahatia from the first is the same as the source but in ahead of time, won't waking him up in the source mess up the timeline? No, they established in Shadowbringers that the timelines are not directly connected to one another. That's established as soon as you finish Shadowbringers, because the entire end scene of Shadowbringers is about how the Crystal Exarch goes, well, my whole plan was to go back, prevent all this from happening, and then I would disappear and you guys would get sent home. But I'm still here. It's because it's not like Back to the Future time mechanics. Think of it like Avengers time mechanics, or some of the other examples they list in that movie, where there's a divergence point and two separate timelines, but if you go back before the divergence point, it still branches off into two things. You can't affect the timeline you're currently on by going back and changing something in the past. It just creates another timeline that branches off. And even going back to the actual origin point doesn't affect anything. So no, nothing would affect, they won't affect each other at all. That's been established since the end of the 5.0 story patches. Oh, this one's got a long hashtag. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays. You know what it is. Hi, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Have some soldiery bonus. Hey, man. Soldiery. Is that... I'm trying to remember. I was like, wait. Soldiery. Okay. Do you know the development team's ever going to let us change the default mount music? I'm so tired of it. You know, it's been requested in the past to give us like an MP3 player. It's been often referenced to Final Fantasy 15 when they ask the sound team, or Soken specifically, about this. And I think they've mentioned that there's actually a great many number of issues that come with allowing the music to be freely changed. I don't remember what it was. I'd have to look back on some of the interviews. They said it wasn't impossible, but that there were some technical difficulties they'd have to work around. And I'm just going to assume that it's become such a not high priority that that we haven't heard about it in a while. I do think they'll do it eventually, though. And I think it's possible, but they know more about the way their back end is done than I do. So I'm definitely not the expert to talk about here. I'm going to assume right now that there's stuff that prevents it from being done as simply as you've suggested. All right, next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Happy Monday to you. Happy Well, it's Sunday for me, but you know what? I'll read this again tomorrow, and then it'll make sense. And happy Monday to you, too. What new beast races and potential beast tribes do you want to see in the next expansion? I would like to see the UK from Crystal Towers or the Hummingway. The Bonga are already in game. They're likely. It'd be neat to see a higher res version of the Shumi, and so it all depends on where the expansion actually is. Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. So they draw inspirations from all sorts of Final Fantasies based on where we're actually going. And there's the option of them designing all new ones. I don't think that we necessarily have to label... The term beast tribe now no longer really applies to beast tribes. It applies to tribes that are native to the lands we're going to. At the very least, we can establish this from the fact that dwarves, which we know are the Lalafell equivalent on the first, and are, you know, completely reasonable. They've worked together in a band of heroes to save the world, just like we have. They're no less intelligent or no less appreciated, but they just have a different structure of their community. You know, they don't live in the big cities. They have their own little towns, and they carve, you know, houses out of the stones on the sides of mountains and stuff like that. So they just don't have the same kind of culture, is the term that I was looking for, that the Lalafells do. But for them to be lugged in with beast tribe quests shows us that it no longer needs to be as simple as a beast tribe. It can literally be any indigenous race that isn't playable, or even, you know, may represent something close to a playable race, but is not entirely representative of it. That could mean things like certain Viera tribes. That could mean things like Hrothgarian tribes as well. That could mean, you know, races from other games that, you know, in those games may live in cities, especially places like the Ivalice universe. As you've listed the Bonga here, any of those. There's, of course, the... oh, man, there's so many names that all of a sudden just flooded into my head at once. I went to go with Freya for 9, and then I completely forgot the name for a race as soon as I went to say it. You have them... Oh, yeah, literally any. And then they could also just make all new ones. So there's no limit. I don't really care which ones we get. I just want them to be written well and be fun to fight, I suppose. Really written well is the number one thing I care about. Even if we were to go to, like, the New World and, like, the tribes out there that use blue magic, the native tribes. It'd be nice if even they kind of counted as such. You know, even looking over back to the Odzium Steppe, the Aura tribes that are there, that live there naturally. They're not beast tribes, but, you know, I'm starting to lug all the things that we've called beast tribes in with just civilizations that exist out in the world. I want to see more of that, and I think that literally, it's wide open. They'll do whatever they want, and it actually really excites me. All right, next question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing well this week, too, and pizzas and pepperonis are still available. Yes, I know. I had a pepperoni pizza before the live letter that we recently had. It looks like you have some stuff regarding that. Wanted to ask a question, give some translation information, and bounce back your answer on Tactics last week. So about 12 in Tactics. You mentioned wanting a proper Steam version of Tactics rather than play it on PS1 GBA, but I think you mixed it up and meant PSP. No, I meant PS1, because guess what? I don't have a PSP or a Vita. And if I have to buy the game to emulate it anyway, which you do, because I create content for a living, so if I'm streaming it, I have to own the game, and technically you have to extract the ROM yourself, but as long as you own it, that's usually a bare minimum. I'd rather just buy it on Steam, or PlayStation 4, or something modern. And my phone, not going to be the thing that I play it on. I want a nice, proper Steam, brand new, updated HD port that is delicious, and it can be War of the Lions. It cannot, probably would be. I don't see why they'd go back to pre-War of the Lions, and that is how I'd like to enjoy it. And until that moment, I will not be playing it again. So that's where we stand on that. There were a bunch of other comments. I'm like, oh my god. Someone's like, I have it on my Vita, and I'm like, yeah, sorry, I don't buy paperweights, and PSP is not something I'm buying in this day and age, and I'm not running a PSP emulator. As tempted as I am for Crisis Core, I'm not doing it for Tactics. And I'm not even that tempted for Crisis Core because I didn't really like Crisis Core that much. Anyway, and I know this bit about the French version being called Navarrete Crossing. Le Treffes. I can't say it. That's not worth trying to say. Question with 5.3 live letter. We roughly know what the A Realm Reborn revamp will look like from what we gathered. Are there things from A Realm Reborn you would like Square to revamp, and would you like them to do a similar job? Grand Company, Advancement, and Squadrons. I would like them to revamp in A Realm Reborn. I think Squadrons are a completely lost piece of content that are a great alternative for leveling, especially if you're someone who wants to do dungeons, but you want to do them in your own time. Expand the number of dungeons that are available in the early levels. Give the player access to them earlier instead of working on developing a trust system for them the entire way. and also just make the Grand Company unlocking process a little bit less tedious. They made the Chocobo unlocking less tedious. You literally get the seals for the Chocobo from the quest prior to it, from the main scenario quest that you get along the same, literally like alongside of it. So that's a big thing. And I don't think they need to do that at all for the future expansions, because there aren't Grand Companies and like and Squadron stuff to worry about. But I guess adding trusts or adding more Squadron dungeons for the later parts. There's Heavensward dungeons. They said maybe they'll do 60 to 70 dungeons at some point. But really, it's those things. Grand Company and Squadrons are things I'd really like them to revisit availability on and streamlining in 5.3 or afterwards. Okay, so oddly enough, I think that might have been the last question. There's a bunch of 7 Remake spoiler questions that, again, I feel like are either speculatory, meaning like, do you think this could happen, and I just don't have much to add, or are answered by some of my recent Ultimania translations. A bunch of comments about War of the Lions. I'm not playing the PSP version. I'm not buying a PSP. I'm not buying a Vita. I'm not emulating a PSP, because if I have to buy the game anyway, I don't want it for PSP. That's not happening. 0% chance. And then, yeah, there's another 7 Remake one. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then there's one about 24-man Savages. That's not happening. The closest thing you'll get to that is Baldesion Arsenal. And really, those aren't, the bosses in there aren't really any harder, or only slightly harder than your average 24-man. It's less about how difficult the boss is and more about the threat of permanent death. And we will be getting a BA2 equivalent at some point. So, no, I don't think it's already annoying enough. If anything, they should focus on harder 4-man content, which they've already stated that is relatively hard to balance. They could do it, but it would mostly be stressing on the healers and not really much of anyone else. That's why they've generally avoided doing it at this point. So I think that's going to cover all the Q&A for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions. If you have questions, be sure to put them in the comment section of the video below. And be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. Thank you to SteelSeries. Thank you to our patrons, whose names scrolled by at the beginning of the video. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Be safe, be happy, be healthy, and I'll see you next week. Until then, take care.